Hi, we are ready to start. My apologies very much for the delay, but we're starting approximately almost 15 minutes late. Let's see what we can do about that. Otherwise, I'll ask you for an extension of time when we get further down the line. What we've got for you today is a super mixed recipe of great things to do with data, analytics, and more, which I think you'll find very digestible. This is the schedule, but of course already we're 15 minutes late. So for 18:30, read 18:45. I will give you a very brief introduction, and in my introduction I will introduce two other people as well, and then we'll go into the main flow of the evening. The main flow goes like this. Angel, who is here, is ex-PWC, and in 2014 he ran a data and data usage survey. He's going to do a repeat of that. In fact, he's not going to do it, you're going to do it, and he's going to analyze the results. So that is the first session we have, which I've entitled Data and Analytics Usage Questionnaire. The second session, again, the main theme is data, and John Morton, who is here, will present data changing the way we do business, which you know is very much a reality, and you are actually practitioners of that. The next person who will give a talk is Abid, who is here, and he will talk about data and analytics tools and their usage. So a little bit about GDPR, then about tools, what you can do with them, and again, the same sort of flow about data, information, how you can use it. Then, as an amusing twist, Andres will come on, and I want him to talk about something else. It's still about data, but here's the teaser. When's the last time you looked under the table? If you haven't looked under the table here, feel free. But I asked Andres specifically to look under the table at what other people can do with your data, your information. And you might find the focus in the torchlight somewhat surprising. So Andres will tell us about the spidering and analyzing techniques which you can use for your data and others, especially, as you can guess, your credit card information and things like this, and you're contributing to the global economy. But it's not your global economy, it's not the economy we recognize, it's something else. So there's a nice twist to the theme of data. Then Angel will come back and give us the results of the survey that you participated in the initial session. So that's what it is. Now, I've got some introductions to each of these chaps as well, but I'm going to let them either give a very brief introduction or skip the introductions because we need to make up time. So that is up to them. If you have any questions for a particular person, because our topics are quite different to each other, please ask them during that session. There is no discussion forum, Q&A at the end of this, although there'll be ample time to network and talk over food and drinks afterwards. So that's the scope of it, and I'd like to first of all ask you ask you to have a look at one or two other things about ISACA London chapter and what we do. I'll go through these right at the end, but these are other events that are happening in March and into April. At the end, we'll review these. So there are various things that are happening, and I want to just ask somebody, maybe Ken, to just talk about this item, which is about the ISACA certification workshops. Please join me in welcoming Ken Spence, President of London Chapter.
Okay. Thank you. Well, what we are doing, we're working in collaboration with BCS IRMA, who are providing workshops to train people for passing these three exams, CSA, CISM and CRISC, which are on the 25th, 9th and 25th of April, not in any particular sequence of this year. And so those of you who are interested in having such education in preparation for the exam, please feel free to click on this link on your newsletter, which went out only a few days ago. And it's also on our website. So you're welcome to do that. It's good stuff. It will lead you in good stead to passing the exam if you so need. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Great. All right. Now, there are lots of things we do in ISACA London chapter. We'll tell you a little bit more about most of those things later, but I'd like to introduce another board colleague of mine. Olivia Bosch is part of the GRA team. Olivia, what does GRA stand for and what have you got to tell us? Olivia Bosch.
Thank you, Dalem. Technically, I'm one of the apprentice directors. You will have heard from last year's AGM, the new process of apprentices. And so I'm apprentice director for the Government Regulatory Advocate, whose director is Peter Drabwell. Anyway, this is a very brief announcement following from some of the work that we're doing. Some of you may know the organization, the Skills Framework for the Information Age. Raise your hand. Have you heard of them? Oh, okay, you need to know. ISACA HQ is, and your certifications are in line with their framework. Like many organizations with certifications and frameworks, they're in the process of updating their skills base, and some of those skills include information assurance, cybersecurity, auditing, and many of the kinds of topics that are within the ISACA type certifications. And SOPHIA, as I call that, Skills Framework for the Information Age, they heard that we have some good ideas, and they would welcome a contribution from ISACA members and through from its body of knowledge and the material in its certifications to facilitate their modernization process, in effect just to make sure that they're up to date with what everyone else is doing. Some of you may be familiar with ITIL is going through a revision process. Prince 2, I understand, has just gone through or in the process of finishing off one. The CISP one is due out in April, and even the ISACA CSX Fundamentals book was updated last year. So there's a lot of review processes going on. If some of you are involved in some way, perhaps you know of other areas, or it may be in your own organizations. If you're interested in participating in some way, I can provide more information, and we hope to put some information in the forthcoming newsletter as well. And I will be here throughout the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Okay, let's get going. And nominations. Right. Okay. Ken would like to have another word about something else. What is it, Ken?
Okay. I'm talking now about the nominations process, whereby a number of you people have volunteered yourselves or your colleagues to join the ISACA London chapter board, either as directors or as apprentice directors. Thank you very much for doing that. We're in the midst of doing interviews for those jobs now, because nominations closed at the end of February. And we will intend to give a list of intended directors and, incidentally, apprentices 2 weeks before the AGM. And the AGM, or Annual General Meeting, will take place on the 22nd of May. Thanks to Dalem organising the accommodation for it. Thank you. Great.
Okay, let's move on into the main agenda. What I'm going to do is hand over to Angel, and he will tell us about the questionnaire.
So, it's perfect. Is this right? Probably some of you know me because I used to organize these events before. I left PWC. I'm not longer within the firm. I'm at Santander, but back in 2014, we organized a very similar event, and we hand over this questionnaire that you have on the tables. Those 10 questions are about data usage, how your organization uses data. You might not know all the questions or the exact answer, but an approximation might work here. The idea is we run that assessment, it got published in one of the ISACA magazines. And what we are trying to do is 4 years later, perform the same questionnaire to the same audience to see how the market has been moving during the last 4 years. We are going to collect those questionnaires right now. We're going to perform change the slides, and we're going to present the results at the end of this session, where you could see that move from 2014 to right now. Feel free to make any notes if some of the questions, might not be applicable now, because put on the mindset that that was performed in 2014, might not be applicable now, but you might have an answer. If you want to write something like a comment or why do you think that that answer is the right one or something different, please feel free to write any comments. And we'll present this session, at the end of this session, the results. So we're going to collect in 5 minutes those questionnaires and present the results at the end. Thank you very much. Dalim?
Okay, thank you, Angel. Are you expecting people to fill in the questionnaires right now or through the event?
If you can fill the questionnaire right now, we're going to collect them in 5 minutes.
Okay. So Angel would like you to fill in your questionnaire right now for collection in 5 minutes. Meanwhile, I'm going to welcome John to come up and we'll start getting ready for his session. Let me introduce you to John Morton, who has considerable decades of experience in IT, and he, as far as I'm concerned, is Mr. Big Data. I've known him for a long time. He was at SAS Institute. That's the place where all the employees wear face masks, completely black uniforms, and they're normally to be seen late at night. Oh no, it's the other one. It's the one which is a big data institute, and John was there for a long time. Please join me in welcoming John Morton.
Thank you, Dalim. I guess my life started in data when I started to do some work around defence and doing algorithmic programming for the European Space Agency to actually put some rockets up into space. Since then, I've done everything from textual analytics to structured data capabilities, transformations in the region of between £300 million data transformations for central governments and large organisations, up to £3 billion transformations, which include things like financial crimes, looks at fraud, as well as boring little statistical things. So some large projects. I've actually nicked some of these slides from a presentation deck that I use for MSc in data science for one of the universities. You're not going to get the full 3 hours. I think that's a good thing. I've cut it down to about 13 slides. And what I was asked to do was to focus on the landscape. So how many people are already working on data, big data projects, machine learning and artificial intelligence? A lot fewer than I normally get. How many are working in IT technology? And how many are trying to get the business to be more effective and efficient? I'm surprised all hands weren't up for that. Right. So, you've seen all of the news over the last few years. We are going to lose our jobs. This is a Bank of England report. Yeah? 900,000 UK retail jobs. And when you start to look at the challenges that John Lewis are already having, and the re-change in the retail marketplace for them, because they can't go and make people redundant, it's a partnership model. They're now having to look at how do we grow and set out a new way of working. Maplins, you've already heard about. Toys R Us, and I bet you there's a few more that are going to come. And in fact, front-end engagement is changing. It's no longer a sales process. It's much more about consultative selling, customer service capability. And in the factories, it's all changing. Morrison's have just cut a whole bunch of jobs as well recently. And Tesco have cut another bunch of store managers. Tesco's are doing a bit of a churn cycle, actually. They're hiring in some areas. Don't worry, I've put at the back of this some references, so if you want to see the fuller articles and understand what's actually happening in the marketplace, you can have a look at that, and that's on the PDF that will come out. And hey, let's get rid of staff. We've already got our first no human intervention store opened up in Seattle, and that's not the only one. There are plans for stores like this in the Philippines with different companies as well. So our world is changing. The use of robotics is coming into the back-end processing. Something like 120,000 people are involved in stock and restocking at the back office systems. So what about robots in that place? I actually had a meeting this morning where they've introduced robots in an electronic component factory, and all the employees are starting to get really worried about, oh, I'm going to lose my job. 3D printing parts. You can actually order all the different pieces that you want and have it 3D printed. And look at the revolution in some of the plastics, material sciences, and capabilities there around 3D capabilities for printing in pipes, in metals, in plastics, and, well, in the research labs, we're even doing skin tissue. So, the world is changing. We all know about call centre and the sort of blue-collar workers. You've heard that going. Accountancy firms, they're dying. Just have a look at what's happening with Australia. You're having to reinvent what the new businesses and new business services are. And it's not just the large companies, it's the smaller companies as well. What are the new models that you need to put in place to keep your business model working, i.e. your new operating models? It's real estate agents. Hey, not just American real estates. We've got the Zooplas, but you probably read last week, machine learning analysis of 97% accuracy for contracts, NDAs. And that was done in America as a proof of concept. In Germany, we've got commercial companies who are looking at property information, all angles of property information, using deep text analytics to come up with a commercial model from your contract, and then compare that with what your existing IT and sometimes IT legacy systems are doing, and finding an extra 15 million here, 20 million there on contracts. In fact, they say a 20% improvement on average across all of your property contracts. That's happening today. Real estate cashiers, you know about Uber and Airbnb. All of these are happening. And yet, we've now moved to the point where we don't need the data scientists. In fact, the rate at which we're going, a lot of the models, the patterns that have to be put in place will have been developed and worked. And therefore, some of the pundits out there are saying, even though you're trying to train the 50 to 60,000 data scientists that the UK need, by 2025, using some elements of ML and some elements of AI, those will no longer be needed. So what are we going to do with all those data scientists? So is it just hype, or is it something real?
Can I do one on you? Just in all these things, somebody is making shed loads of money, which means somebody else is losing shed loads of money.
Maybe.
John, just repeat the question for these.
Okay. The question was, in all of these, somebody must be making sheds loads of money by disrupting the environment, and yet others must be losing money. So if you look at Uber, it's a simple example. What they've done is they've taken the information flows and the information relationships, and they have isolated them from the asset. Airbnb model is exactly the same. And I think that's part of the challenge going forward. Many of the new operating models, the business model is the same, money in, money out. But the operating model and how you actually structure that is about where your asset is. I've forgotten the name. Is it Workplace? Who are doing, they don't own any buildings, but they're renting out the buildings. They're about a $3.5 billion US business that's grown up over the last 9 years don't have any of the assets that a Regis or anybody else does, and are beating Regis point on point on point. It's a challenge. It's about using information. It's about being better at information. I'll take another example. A company you've probably never heard of, Car Trawler. Anybody heard of them? Excellent. Do you know what they do?
Yeah, they negotiate between the seller and buyer.
They negotiate between the seller and buyer on the hiring of cars. They are behind, when you go to a booking system in the airports or in a hotel, they're behind what car do you want. They provide all of that service. Do you know what they do for Visa, Hertz, all the rental companies, Dollar in the US? When they say you owe us this amount of money because of the rentals that we've done for you, they all turn around and say, here's the money. Because Visa, Hertz and everybody else knows that the quality of their data is so poor, the transactions in their IT systems are so bad, that Car Trawler give them that integrity and reliability that they understand their data better than anybody else. About 700 people, they've just brought about 250 back from Romania, all based in Dublin. Excellent little company. Unfortunately, it's privately owned, and therefore you can't get shares in it. But let's move on, conscious of time. So what's the real value for business people in trying to use all of this data? What we're trying to take out is the gut feel, right? I'm very clear about when I'm delivering systems, I'm going to give you evidence-based information to help you make the right judgment. I'm not forcing you to make a judgment. I'm just giving you better information than what you've had in the past. Because so often, when you go along to the boardroom and ask them, where's the information? Where's the facts? Can you actually show the lineage of this is the accurate information? You go about one step down and you find out they're working off of sand or make-believe. Companies who've been doing this consistently have found that they're between 6 and 7% better than their competitors. But they're not even competing because they're actually setting the pace. Have a look at Eli Lilly, have a look at Levi Strauss and how they've actually implemented this. There's an Economist report from the Economic Intelligence units about game changing. I can't remember the full title. It's a great read because it actually identifies real examples, economically proven to drive and change business. So we're going to be tossing coins if we don't have fact-based information. And if we're doing that, then we're starting to understand that the rate of change of business, the competitive, you asked about, there's people out there that are eating my lunch. I was at a presentation by White.net. You've probably never heard of them. They're a branding company. They showed their clients that here is what you think is your current competitors. And it was all the ones that they knew about. By going on and using some simple Google Analytics, they identified 12 other companies that were in their market and that they were the ones who were actually taking the share. Their traditional classic competitors weren't taking the business from them. It was the new upstarts that were in there. They had no strategies to inhibit that competition, and they had no strategies to get those customers back. White.net, I think, are still based in Oxford. So, you're going to read an awful lot. I'm going to go back to good old Gartner. Gartner coined the term big data back in 2000, and it was nice and simple. Velocity, how fast you can get hold of the data. Variety of data, right? The highest variety of data that I've worked with, I wouldn't call it big data, but highest variety was nearly 800 sets of discrete information that had to be brought together, analysed to make some decisions. But most people think of big data as volumes. It's the weather, it's Met Office information, it's high transaction volume through telecoms. However, if you want to get into the real theory of all of this stuff, There is a full model, and I believe, I have heard, there might be another tier being added to it of another 4 different factors. That's all great. It's great theory. It helps to analyse different businesses in different ways. But actually, this is what people are really interested in. What's the value of the information? How can I use it? And where can I help it be more efficient and effective within my organisation? So why is all the interest? Because it can actually drag out a lot of the administration and key elements out of your business, helping to streamline your organisation. I took a large retailer. It had a 32-step process that meant they got an idea at the end of the week of where their figures were. We brought that down to a 6-step process so that they could actually make decisions the day before, so that they were actually sending swimsuits to Seattle because they knew it was going to be warm tomorrow, and they were sending ice cream to Los Angeles the next day because it was going to be, they're sending burgers and barbecue sets to Los Angeles because they were trying to make better optimization. They then made an extra $20 million US per year from just taking on those simple optimizations, i.e. in the first year it was cost equal for them. I'll let you read the rest. There is a huge need for skills, talent and capability to drive this within the UK because we want to be the best. I want to be the best. I think UK can really lead on this. We've got the excellent talent and capabilities, and in some areas we've got some of the most leading tools, some areas. Is big data for everyone? This is a report back from McKinsey's looking at US labour information. Yes, it is. In fact, I haven't found any business in the UK that isn't thinking about doing something or actively doing this, except one in construction. They say that they make bricks, they're happy to make bricks, and that's all they want, and they don't need to know the data about them. I think they're missing out on forecasting and supplier and a few other things, but that's what their view of the world is. Open data. Everybody heard about open data? Freely available information. The weather data in the US is freely available. You can have it. So why did IBM spend something like £3.5 billion on the weather company who's using free data? Because they didn't buy that, they bought the intelligence of what does that mean, the applications, the IP in the logic above that. So getting hold of data and using data doesn't mean a thing. Hear about people creating lovely big data lakes. Excellent. How are you going to actually investigate them? I've come across 3 companies who've spent in the region of 10 to 20 million pounds building their data lake, and they still don't know how to use it. And in fact, for one of them, unfortunately, when I pointed out that the business, the actual drivers were about fraud and financial crimes, they couldn't use that structure that they'd already put in place. You might not have seen something like this. This is the open data that's available. There are about 5,000 to 6,000 sets of data that's added to that. Is there a pointer on this? Okay, I'm going to move. This bit up here, that little bit up there, is sort of UK type data. The rest is all information that is freely available from around the world, and it is being added to all the time. Therefore, there are an awful lot of new models that can be made. The intelligence is how you link the data together. Some people have put some early stuff together, but when you start to look at how Experian access this information, how other companies are accessing it, that's where the intelligence and the clever thought processes are. So, who are the data scientists? Anybody here consider themselves a data scientist? In statistics, operational research, econometrics, or financial mathematics? In psychology?
I am interested in timeliness.
I think the challenge is that in today's modern world, it isn't about one scientific discipline. It's about bringing together a range of disciplines. I'm working in the gambling area. specifically with one particular client, and we're doing quite a lot about nudge theory, psychology, motivation, and also, because we're looking specifically about gambling awareness and non-gambling, how do you move back from that and stop people gambling? But there's loads of other types of problems like this. I also work with the Institute of Environmental Analytics around new sets of data which, added to your business data, can actually drive efficiency. Understanding what's the likelihood and probability of fog, and then making sure that you actually make just-in-time deliveries to your supermarkets, to your stores, etc. This is a piece of work from a few years ago with one of my friends, Professor Richard Vidgen. He also actually developed that by going around a number of large billion-pound companies, looking at their analytics capabilities and saying, what is the strategy? What are the dynamics of the strategy that you need to put in place? Do take the time to actually read the report. There's a lot of really good examples and challenges about how you create the teams of the future. We heard about Sophia earlier. I'm also working on Sophia. I'm working on it on behalf of the BCS. On the last revision of Sophia, we included analytics. It includes a lot of the IT assurance things that we've already heard about. It also includes a huge range of data and data capabilities. And the challenge that we find when we're building teams is, how do we blend all of these skills together? You will never find one person. If you find one person who says they can do everything, I would take it with a big, big pinch of salt. It's about teams, and it's about understanding what's the business problem that you're trying to face, what's the type of analytics that you're going to put in place, and how do you need to structure the data to deliver on that. It's a composite. And actually you find that even if you get the good data scientists, they don't understand what that means and is relevant to the business to drive business value, profitability, or to save citizens' lives. So, data in the analytics world. We've all heard about structured data and unstructured data. What's the other type of data we have?
Semi-structured.
Semi-structured. What else? I can't hear you. Metadata. I would say that that's just structured data that comes out of the actual primitives that you get. So graphical information systems, pictures, and there's a lot of stuff going on around pictures. Think about CCTV cameras and how they're using that to drive intelligence around footfall and footfall analytics and about crowd and working out whether there's dirty bombs and all those sort of things. Pictures in motions, some people might call that video. 3D and 4D modeling. Anyone come across that? Architecture diagrams and all the features around architecture diagrams. Think about British Airways or British Aerospace building flights, tanks, cars. Very important in the automotive industry at the moment. And then related data. Because one of the things is data is no use. It's just static information. What's the use of the number 1, 2, 4? What's important is understanding its relevance. So understanding that it's £1, that it's 2% is key. So information is where we're really looking for. And the drivers today around using information is adding in those extra pieces of information to drive insight, capability, process. How many of you have heard of or used process mining techniques? Good. Everybody's heard about data mining, text mining, but process mining is one of the newer fields. There's some really good research work coming out of the Netherlands and Holland. How am I doing in time?
Just about so.
Okay. So, if you understand these extra dynamics of relating data to the information, the motivations, the behaviors that people are doing, so you're pulling together more information at a point in time, so therefore you can start to look at it in greater insight, you need to link it all together. So taking data, taking that information, you can start to look at different aspects of the business. These are real figures. They're from about 2004, coinciding with the previous report, but nothing to do with the previous report, around how people are using additional data over and above their classic interpretation to drive a better understanding of their customers, their employees, the way that their business relationships are working, or how they can be more competitive or drive new products into new markets via different channels. So, some low-hanging questions. Forecasting models. Forecasting models. Excel is a brilliant tool because what you can do is you can do things like trend analysis. If nothing changes, if the world is the same, we can just keep potting along. That's called trend analysis. A lot of people call it forecasting. It's not. Forecasting is about starting to do a little bit of the what if this changes? What if the employment rate changes? What if we have to pay an extra contribution to our pensions? What if we change minimum wage? Starting to look at what's happening, but still a hindsight model. Data mining models, looking at what how your products are actually being used. I said right at the very beginning, effectiveness of data. Which of your customers, or which of the customers that you're working with, are the ones that are subsidizing the rest of your customers? Activity-based costing models. You've probably used them, heard of them, but actually they're coming back more and more, especially when people start to look at themes within organizations such as revenue leakage. Text mining models. I've already talked about some of the things in the property area, but there are a huge number of other text mining things that are going on specifically to drive out new insights, especially in the fraud area and operations research. I am going to have to skip on a little bit. So how does this turn into reality? I've picked out a couple of things, the market basket analysis. How do you actually determine next what people are going to buy? Good old Amazon capabilities. Easy. Recommendation engines. These are real figures from real customers about what they achieved in using recommendations as a first line. Recommendation engines are actually quite easy to put in place once you've got the data that you need. What's really important is turning the recommendations into actionable information within a short period of time, the velocity aspect. Oh, okay. Let's come out with that. I apologize for the questions. It is something to do with the translation. It worked fine when I sent it. Right. That was a bit of a whirlwind. As I said, there are another 72 odd slides in the full deck. But I wanted to give you a little bit of an inkling of how the world is changing, the landscape, the challenges that are in there. And for me, when I look at systems that have been put in place that have been said to be, this is all working and it's great, I find more and more it's a lack of understanding the data, understanding how to structure the data, and understanding the types of algorithms that you need to use to get the insight out of the data.
Yeah, great, thank you, John. Great, thank you very much, John. Okay, that's about big data in today's world. Now, this is the interesting time when I invite you to stop looking above the table and take a quick peek under the table. Andres himself is a very interesting person. I've known him for a number of years, and he is actually a lecturer at the University of East London. He's a senior lecturer in computing there. And he's been working in academia for a long time in various places, including, let me announce this straight away, at the University of Turin, as well as the University of Sheffield, and other places. But the work he leads on the analysis of dark web markets has been featured in several media, including on the front page of The Times. So, this is an interesting perspective on data, not the way you use it, but the way your data might be used by others. Please join me in welcoming Andres.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the kind introduction. Okay. What are we going to talk about today? I'm going to give a short introduction on what the surface web, the deep web, and the dark web are. Then we're going to talk about dark web markets. I'm going to give an outline of what myself and my team, my colleagues, have been doing together. I'm going to show some of the results, and I hope you'll find it interesting. And then I'll tell you some of the things that we are doing now. Yeah, that's what you find on the dark web, and that's what we do. We look at dark web marketplaces, and we try to kind of find trends, find what's over there. When we started looking at the data, we didn't have that much an idea of what we would come. And when you start looking at the images, then kind of that gives you an idea. Most of it is drugs, and then fake IDs and some other stuff. But we'll go much more into detail in the next, 20 minutes or so. Let's start with the definition. All of you, I guess, have used the web. What we normally call the web, in the context of this presentation, we would call the surface web. Anything that can be searched on Google, okay? If it can be reached on Google, that would be the surface web, okay? Most websites are on the surface web, okay? We're talking about 1.07 billion hosts, okay? Under the surface web, we have the deep web, okay? While most of the websites that you would visit are on the surface web, a lot of the web is actually on the deep web, okay? I would call deep web anything that is not indexed by Google, okay? Or search engines in general. That would include typically forums, anything that is on a marketplace, on a query string, if you know what that means. Yeah. It's critical that both the surface web and the deep web, there is typically no encryption. Okay, so the communication is not really encrypted in most cases. Okay, we'll not talk about exceptions. On the dark web, what we have is something much, much smaller, and it's where a lot of criminal activities goes on, okay? The critical difference between surface web, deep web, and dark web is that on the dark web, you have websites that are publicly visible, but hide their address. When you are browsing the internet, it's very easy and very quick to identify yourself. Okay, you are identified by an IP address. Police forces can very quickly identify what you are doing on the surface web and on the deep web. That's not the case on the dark web. Both servers and users cannot be easily identified. Okay. In terms of size, estimates on the size of the deep web vary, but we're talking about 400 times the surface web, okay? When it comes to the dark web, it's very, very small, okay? Estimates again vary, but we're talking anything between 7,000 to 15,000 websites, depending on how you count, okay? And in those websites, you can really find kind of anything, okay? A number of police forces, for obvious reasons, are monitoring and investigating what happens on the dark web. Okay. My research focuses on dark web markets, and markets on the dark web deal typically in drugs, weapons, and any kind of illegal items. What I normally do in these presentations, I try to give a timeline of dark web markets. Okay. Some of the names that you're going to see in the slides will be familiar to you, some maybe less. What I also try to do is to divide marketplace, what has been happening on the dark web in terms of marketplaces in eras, okay? We start with the Silk Road era, one large marketplace dominating the sale of illegal products on the web, okay? February 2013, the Silk Road is taken down, okay? After the Silk Road is taken down, what happens is what we will see over and over and over in the next years. Okay? A number of other dark web marketplaces come up or become more important. Okay? So after the Silk Road, we have the Silk Road 2, Evolution, Hydra. The Silk Road and all the marketplaces that started after have been taken down by the police. Okay? So while you can read a lot about these criminal enterprises and how much money are making and everything that is happening, the real story is that all the big players have been installed, almost all but one. We're going to talk about the one that hasn't. But all the big players have been taken down by the police. Okay? One police force or the other. What does it happen after? The rise of Agora. Once all these marketplaces have been taken down, Agora rises. Agora was already over there, but comes into preeminence once all the other markets are out of the way. And it quickly became the king of the dark web. Okay? Larger than the others, with more features than the others. And up to now, it's the only marketplace that lasted in time. They shut down the shop, and they closed, and the police forces have not been involved in that. They quote a number of different reasons on why they closed the marketplace. We can't really know right now. Okay? What did it happen after? With Agora shutting down, a number of other marketplaces came out. The main difference is that here we have a chasm. Okay? What happens here is dark web marketplaces start upping their game. Okay? It's not anymore websites done by, I'll give you an example. When we started spidering Agora, I thought that the people that were doing that should have failed my programming module. Okay? I wasn't really happy on the security measures that I found over there. That is not the case anymore. Okay? So the people that started working around this time started doing stuff that is much better. Okay? From a technological point of view. What do we have? First of all, a really large number of marketplaces. We're talking about 90 marketplaces. Okay? 7,000 websites, 90 marketplaces. That kind of tells you something about what's going on the dark web. Okay? Typically, one or two, maximum two marketplaces have the most of the market. Okay? And really, the first one takes the bulk. With Alphabay, we have escrow, reputation, multi-signature transaction, coin tumbling, and support of Monero. Technically, the website is much more advanced than all the websites before, and it's supporting a lot of features. It starts being more and more similar to eBay, just for illegal items. Okay? And in terms of size, it was about 20 times the size of Agora at its peak. Okay? We managed to spider both Agora and Alphabay, so we're quite happy of the data sets that we have for that. What did it happen after? Alphabay and Hansa have been taken down in the summer, and after having been monitored for several weeks, which is interesting, the police decided to sit down on the websites for a while to see what was going on. Well done. What happened in this case is very similar to what happened before with the Silk Road. Okay? Programmers did stupid things. The Silk Road, at the time it was taken down because the guy that was running the Silk Road used the same nickname on the Silk Road and on Stack Overflow. Okay? Stack Overflow is a popular programming forum. And police are monitoring those things. And when there is some guy that has the same nickname on the two places, that kind of rings a bell. Okay? The largest marketplaces are now Dream Market, which is about 120,000 products, much smaller than Alphabay. Okay? Point, Wall Street, Libertas. What's key to note is that the second dark web market, it's about 1/10 compared to the first. Okay. What's going on in dark web markets? Well, nothing very dissimilar to what you would see in other illegal operations. Okay. Operations on dark web markets are not taxed, neither directly or indirectly. Dark web markets offer sellers the possibility to place products that they wouldn't typically be able to place on normal marketplaces, with minor exceptions. Okay? And key aspects are privacy protection. If you do it the right way, seller and buyer cannot be identified, exchange of money, and illicit profits. Okay? What do? We do three main things, myself and the people that work with me. We spider, which means we copy the contents from websites in our databases. Okay? Then we scrape. We go from unstructured information, as we were talking before, to structured information. Okay? We get structured data with a number of techniques that I'm going to discuss in the next slide. And we do some data wrangling, okay? Because the data that we scrape is going to be different. The format of the data is going to be different across different websites, okay? Finally, from our data, we try to extract knowledge, okay, from large sets. I really liked your slide with all the technologies that are used in data science, okay? We have been using a number of different tools, not that many, but quite a bit. For spidering, we've been using PHP and Python. Then we've been for data storage, mostly MySQL and MySQL on Amazon. Okay, we've been using a few other things for data storage, JSON, CSV. There is kind of relational data, but there's also binary data. Okay, we store images. Those images, depending on the project, we may be storing locally or on Amazon, S3 again. Okay? For spidering, we like to have fun. The fact is we work in a university, so we have slightly different constraints, and what we are using is stuff that we like to try in some cases. We've been using wget, curl, libcurl, selenium for spidering, and then for scraping, some of this stuff is very old. Regular expressions are kind of 40 years old or so, but they still work, and we really do use a lot of them in our scraping. The document object model, Selenium, Scrapy. Okay. For data mining, then you may recognize while you may not recognize what's on kind of this side, I'm pretty sure that you recognize what we have here, okay, because the tools that we use on this side are not very different from what you would be using. Okay, so Python, R, Weka, SAS, depending on the project and the phase of the project, that's the kind of technology that we're using. What now? I'm going to talk about one of these dark web markets that we analyzed, Alphabay. As we said before, Alphabay was the successor to Agora and shot to prominence when Agora stopped, closed down. Okay. What's key? When you talk about dark web markets, it's not that dark web markets have no rules. Dark web markets do have rules, okay? And there are some sort of other ethical or practical boundaries that you will see in dark web markets. On Agora, for example, there was no assassination and no body parts that could be sold. Well, that may not be your ethical boundaries, but they did have some ethical boundaries. On Alphabay, no prostitution, no child pornography, and again, no assassination. In general, you will not find child pornography in dark web markets, okay? And you will not find prostitution either, whether it's specifically spelled or not. I'm talking about dark web markets rather than dark web. On the dark web itself, on forums and other more secluded environments, you will find the rest, okay? But not in dark web markets. Quite interesting, on Alphabay, no anti-Russian and anti-CIS hacking mark and malware were allowed. Any ideas why?
Russian run?
Russian run. That was very well done. they wanted to, there are some marketplaces that are clearly run by national groups, Israelis, Italians, and so on, and Russians. Alphabet was not. But they wanted to have a decoy, and so they were putting all these rules to protect Russian activities, which was just to have a decoy. Well told. The guy, I think, was Canadian living in Thailand. Okay, so no link whatsoever with Russia. And this is what Alphabet looked like. Okay, you could buy your products, and the listing was not dissimilar to what you would see in your eBay. Let's go through some numbers. Alphabet at its peak at around 400,000 ads. Okay, and if you look at the popularity on Google, it started coming up as Agora was shut down. Okay. The number of ads per month has been increasing, okay, by nearly 6 times since the demise of Agora, which again tells us that there is just one marketplace dominating the market at the time. What we try to do is try to do some analytics based on the data that we collected. So based on our sample, we have about a 10% sample. Within the total value of the individual products on sale would have been around $88 million. So quite, some corporation. The total value of the transactions on the market, we're talking about 590 millions. Okay, we got to that number by what we know is what was the cut of the guy running it, because that was seized by the police. Okay, we know what was his commission, and so we can work out that the total value of the transactions on the whole existence of the market was around 500 millions, which, again, gives you an idea of what is going on over there. Okay? Geographical distribution, most of the, whatever criteria you want to use, number of products, number of sellers, market size, the US are the first market, and UK is second. Whatever criteria you want to use, it doesn't matter. Okay? Most of these countries are strong economies, part of the G7. Okay? Origin and destination. What will vary is the willingness of sellers within different countries to send their products outside their own country. Okay? So you will find that sellers in Western economies are less keen on taking the risk of selling their product overseas, while other economies, especially in third world countries, are more likely to sell overseas. European sellers are likely to sell across Europe. Okay? British market, drugs and more drugs. Almost the whole of the market is drugs. Okay? Most European countries follow the same pattern, mostly or mostly exclusively drugs, just with differences on the type of drugs that are more popular. Apparently countries have kind of drugs that they prefer, okay? Weapons and ammunitions. Weapons were on sale on some of the markets, not all of the markets. It's a sensitive thing. Agora had on them for years and then decided to remove them. US first, UK second, okay, for pistols. Again, for drugs and chemicals, you can see that United States and UK are first. But that really reflects the fact that most of the market is in the United States and the UK. Okay? I'm going to analyze a couple of specific products because they are a bit interesting. Ketamine, for example. Okay? If you look at the Indian market, for example, almost the whole of the market in India is ketamine. That's linked to the fact that most European countries and Western countries are consumers. India is a producer in this case of ketamine. And that probably reflects the reason why India has such a high predominance of ketamine. Okay? Ketamine, I had to Google it. It's a drug that has recreational uses, but it's also occasionally used as a rape drug. Okay? Fentanyl. Synthetic heroin, well, something similar to heroin and synthetic. Top seller countries, US and China. Buds and flowers, again, for people that want to grow their own. US, Australia, Canada, and UK are at the top. Okay. This slide, I'm going to stop slightly longer on this one. We get always a lot of questions on documents and fake IDs. Okay. Documents and fake IDs are over there on the dark web. Okay. You will find different types of documents and fake IDs. You may, a lot of it is stolen passports and stolen IDs. So if we steal your passport, well, if someone steals your passport, you may find it on the dark web, and they will be trying to look for a buyer that looks like you, for example. That's the typical kind of market for stolen passports. Okay. You will find also, in some cases, things that have been that are real rather than stolen, just illicit, realistically by bribing public officers. Okay, so you'll find the occasional real foreign license. Okay, a lot of it, and that may be relevant to your business, it's scans and personal data. Okay. Scans of passports, you can buy them by the 100,000, 10,000. You buy really them in quantities. Okay, they're used to, to try to build, to do identity fraud and that kind of thing. Okay, and that's really common. What else? It varies a lot in time. How much does it cost? And how many fake IDs you can find. That's kind of supply-driven rather than demand-driven. Amongst these kind of strange things that you may find, there are also, for example, London Underground paper tickets, okay, and UK train tickets. Realistically, as a way to you steal a credit card, you buy the paper tickets, and then you can sell the paper tickets. Okay. Wrapping up, what are critical issues in what we're doing? Our first development round was funded by the University of East London with a very small grant, but that helped. I'm working mostly with students, BSc, MSc, PhD, whatever I can find. Typically, this is a side project for the student or something that can, get students involved on the final year. So. Most of the people will not work on this for more than 9 months. Okay, we haven't really analyzed as in depth as we would have wanted the whole data set. Okay, the whole data sets really. Okay, this media reception, as Darlene was saying before, has been fairly positive. We got the front page of the Times and a few other places, and to be honest, that was quite surprising, but we were happy nevertheless. Some conclusions. As we said, we can estimate that there were about 88 million of individual products on sale at the time of our spidering of Alpha Bay. The total value, about $590 million, so a lot of money. Drugs, IDs, weapons, readily available, you could just buy and get them delivered home. Okay. It's worth noting that your EU ID card allows you to travel across all Europe, okay? And there's typically plenty of those on sale, okay? It's also worth mentioning that one of the things that changed in the years is that dark web markets are working now very cautiously, very slowly, trying to detect spidering. So our spidering is progressing much later right now, okay? And what's next? Kind of more spiders always. We are running spiders right now and trying to develop as many as we can. More in-depth understanding of marginal categories. Okay, you can find a lot of odd stuff on the dark web and we want to understand more of it. Okay, a better understanding of organized crime. We are sure that dark web markets are run by organized crime. We are sure of it because we ran some preliminary analysis using NLP, largely NLP, and we can see that there's a lot of use of sock puppets, sellers that claim to be different sellers, but in reality they are run by the same kind of organization. Yeah. We want to look at the possibility of having alerts. Okay, rather than just analyzing ex post what has been happening in the dark web markets, being able to alert people that stuff that is relevant to them is on sale on the dark web. Okay? We have not touched fora yet. We don't know what's going on in fora, and that's something that we may want to look at in the future. And we're always keen to know what's going on, any new trends. And that's all for me. Any questions? Thank you, then.
Thank you. Well, do you have any ideas about a new profession, should you get fed up with the world of risk? Certainly you can adopt a whole lot of new identities, so why not become somebody completely different? Or perhaps we'll stick to Second Life and the world and our virtual worlds that we are more familiar with. Well, whilst we've been doing all of this, Ankel has been doing a different kind of analysis. He's analyzed the data that you provided him with, and I think that in a moment he will give us the results. So we're running pretty well on time, and it's now, in a moment, over to Ankel to give us the results of the data survey.
Thank you very much, Darlene. So, during the time that my colleagues were presenting, we have been collecting the data, and these are the results. On the first one, we still think that it's going to change the world, big data, data analytics, and all the big hype of data analytics in general. However, back in 2014, we thought that it was going to change the world more than we think now. A couple of comments were very interesting. That is, they believe that it's going to change the world, but it's taking longer than expected. And there are not examples, real life examples that they could see and they could feel. So it's in line with what we had 4 years ago, but there are small changes. Number two is pretty much the same. However, one of the key comments was big data has to be defined and clearly understood by everyone in the organizations. That includes business as well, which I believe is quite interesting. Number three, we believe that the level of skills needed is not that important. It's not that it's because it's not that important. It's because organizations have the chance to create that skill set within the teams and hire external resources that bring those skills in-house. On the other side, management is one of the biggest problems for embracing big data. And the big problem, several comments indicated that they don't understand it, basically. And they don't understand what it can bring. Number four, what are the biggest risks? And the main one is lose advantages against competitions, which is what we expected, but is more emphasized now than 4 years ago. Sorry if I'm very fast on this, but I'm the only thing standing between you and the drinks, so that's, yeah, you will find this online anyway. Number five, does your organization have data analytics tools? Yes, have been increased, but not drastically. 6, this is very interesting because, well, there is more data analytics using Facebook and external sources than 4 years ago, which makes sense. 4 years ago, it was very difficult to integrate platforms like Facebook or Twitter within the organization. Now there are tools that allow you to do that. 7, how do your customers feel about data issues? And the big thing that I have seen is that they are interested on how to use the profile, not much about privacy. However, in number 8, one of the things that it calls my attention is that GDPR increase the awareness of how we use data on customers. And one of the comments was, we need to be clear about the legal implications of GDPR, how we can use GDPR, well, data in a way that we can get value from them without breaking the rules of GDPR. Number 9, it calls the attention that greater confidence in decisions is the key differentiator between the usage of data analytics and not using data analytics, and that has been increasing from 4 years ago. And the final one, customer is the one that has been increased on the usage of data analytics. That is in line with what the advantage against competitions is what we believe, or you guys believe, that is the biggest differentiator in using data analytics. There is something that is missing here, that is basically a couple of comments said that marketing is as well one of the key areas. So this is all from our side.
Thanks very much, Angel. Okay, let me wrap up by telling you what's coming up next. We've got a number of events coming up, of course. One is tomorrow, actually, at BCS, our partner organization, and that's at BCS Covent Garden. It's called Womenspiration, which may not appeal to most people here, but the surprising thing is about a quarter of the Womenspiration audiences are actually non-female. Alias male. So everybody is welcome. Is anyone planning to go tomorrow? A whole lot of men and 1 or 2 women. Tremendous. Look forward to seeing you there. And included in the lineup of women who are going to be speaking there is a partner at PWC, and she's the partner for data assurance at PWC. So come and hear her story and others. I'm looking for Vladlena, my colleague on London chapter board, and Ken is indicating the empty seat where Vladlena was sitting, so maybe she's heading there straight away. Who knows? See you there tomorrow. The other thing that I want to highlight to you is about the 12th of April, the next ISACA London chapter event. And you're all high risers, of course, so I'm sure this will appeal to you greatly. It's at Protiviti, and Protiviti have got a superb room on level 17 of the Shard, and that's where we're going to have our next event. Thursday, April the 12th at 6:30 p.m. It's called Catching the Digital Wave. But before you can get up to level 17, there's something I must tell you. The Shard has airport-style security. Therefore, you need to have photo ID, and you have to be prepared to show it. So, therefore, take a passport or take a driving license, have that. Be prepared to have your rucksack or bag searched, and be prepared to have to go through those electronic barriers where they check you. Or, what am I saying? Be prepared for 15 minutes longer than you would expect otherwise. Do be there by 6:05 in order to get up to level 17 for the 6:30 p.m. meeting. There's also another proviso, which is if you're late, they may not allow you to go up. So lots of incentives to be on time, be there, and it's going to be really good. The topic is catching the digital wave, and we've got 3 speakers, all Protiviti speakers. The first will be speaking on the resilience and performance in a digital world. In other words, he's going to be talking about digital maturity assessments. Quite an interesting concept, which Belton Fornoy will outline within the time he's got. The next person will talk about robotic process automation, RPA, from a risk and compliance perspective, and that's John Harvey. Then the final speaker is called Aisling Roberts, and will talk about automation in a real world. In other words, robotic process automation in managing digital identity. So again, something from a very different view and a wonderful view to look out at. That's Thursday, April the 12th. The other thing that I want to tell you about, this is an indication of something, is we're planning something in Reading. So does anybody live towards Reading? Yeah? One person, great. Give me your name and address later. Because that's going to be at Verizon in Reading. It's going to be one of our external events, and it's going to be a whole day. It's actually 9 o'clock till around 5 o'clock at Verizon in Reading. So that's something, again, that's going to be very different. More about that soon. But those are the 3 events I wanted to tell you about right now. There are, of course, BCS North London branch events and so on as well. But we'll talk about those another time. Meanwhile, something you might want to talk about is the food and drink that's waiting for you outside. And you might look around you and find some nice people to talk about it with. Thank you very much for coming. Enjoy the rest of the evening.